So, they say a hero is only as good as its villain, and that is definitely the case in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In fact, Nerdist's definitive ranking of MCU villains, ranked from worst to best, recently blew up on our website. People were debating it left, right, and center, and we thought now would be the perfect time to hash it out once more about which MCU villains are the best at being bad. So you can read the full list for yourself down at Nerdist.com, but suffice it to say, characters like Thanos, Loki, Eric Killmonger all ranked very highly on this list. So to you, what makes a good MCU villain? Riley, let's start with you.
I mean, I gotta give my love to Hela from Thor Ragnarok. I feel like she kind of got a little bit overshadowed by the presence of Jeff Goldblum, but I mean, look at the antlers and the fierceness to it. I gotta give that to her. But the hero that I think gets unsung and needs a little bit more love, even though he's not nearly as compelling, is not played by like a famous actor or whatever. But I gotta give a little bit of respect to Helmut Zemo from Captain America: Civil War, because up until arguably Thanos in Infinity War, Zemo's the only villain to succeed 100% in his plan. Like, yeah, he goes to jail, but his goal is to break up the Avengers. And what does he do? He causes a fight between Captain America and Iron Man that breaks up the Avengers. So, you know, say what you want. And also, I mean, charisma, the style, the fashion, great. That's all successful. Zemo just keeps his head down and he gets stuff done.
Do you think he's going to wear his iconic purple ski mask in The Falcon and the Winter Soldier?
I mean, if he doesn't, I will take back everything I just said.
Yes. Also, justice for Paste Pot Pete. Robert, what do you think makes a good MCU villain?
To me, the best villains are the ones that you don't really see coming. The villains are the ones who are, you know, obviously important to the characters, relevant to the characters, but also you can find a connection to them as an audience member. So for me, when I first saw this list and thought of it, one of the first ones that jumped out to me was Eric Killmonger from Black Panther, obviously, because his goal and his motivation is so relatable and so prevalent to everything that the Black experience is. That being said, though, for me, another villain that I take a really personal connection with is Ego, the Living Planet from Guardians of the Galaxy Part 2. I think to me, what makes that villain resonate so hard is that the fact that you're watching this movie largely from the lens of Star-Lord's perspective, and you think he's a good guy. You think he's just reconnecting with his father. You think that, you know, there's something that's a real relationship that could be building, but he stabs him in the back, and you learn that Ego's the one who pretty much almost completely ruined Star-Lord's life from the very beginning. And it just represents a lot of, you know, toxic masculinity. It resembles a lot of bad fathertism, you know, and for, you know, no pun intended, it resembles the what I think the best villains are, a bad ego, a terrible ego. So I loved everything about it. I think it was so well written. It was so well performed by Kurt Russell, who's probably one of my favorite villains, villain performances. So yeah, to me is Ego for sure.
Awesome. I like that as well, because I will be honest, I love Kurt Russell, but I was not expecting to say that, and you've made me appreciate his performance in a new way. What about you, Markeia? Who reigns supreme on your list of the best baddies?
Well, and keeping in mind that we're just going to set aside the ultimate everybody's best baddies, which, you know, Thanos, Loki, Eric Killmonger. I've gone on record with how much love I have for the villainry that is Eric Killmonger. Yeah. But a villain for me that really sticks out is one that is close to home, someone that is a friend until they're not. And then you don't see it coming until it already happens, and you're just completely, you know, smacked across your head, and you're like, how can I even do this? This person was my friend. So that's why for me, Jeff Bridges in original Iron Man as Obadiah Stane hit so hard. And then think about it. You didn't really have a villain of that caliber and that layer until you start hitting the Captain Americas, like when you get Robert Redford as like Alexander Pierce. And then after that, you start getting more layered villains. So going from the first movie, Obadiah like held that mess as villainry all throughout there. Because think about it. He was like a sleeper cell. He was like a sleeper agent right there next to the Stark family that entire time. And Jeff Bridges plays it so well. And then when he explodes, you're just like, oh, damn. Okay. Yeah, this was festering within him. And you feel that fester. Like the very fact that Iron Man 1, I'm going to specify Iron Man 1 because, you know, we know about 2, but obviously he's not in 2. With Iron Man 1, it's so layered. It hits you. And that is one of the, arguably, one of the, you know, not saying about Blade and, you know, 98, arguably one of the films that just sticks with you throughout. You can keep on coming back to it, and he is a huge part of that. Without him, I wonder if Iron Man would have hit as hard as it did.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to the core of what we're talking about. Like, if you think about those Marvel movies that have kind of forgettable villains or lackluster villains, it really undercuts the rest of it. Because there's cool sequences and moments, but like, you know, take like Malekith from Thor: The Dark World, played by the incredible Christopher Eccleston. He's an amazing actor, and like, by all accounts, that should be like a fun movie. You have this like, okay, you've like introduced Thor. You're finally getting to like revel full on in this like full fantasy world. You have like elves and frost giants, and like you have this mysterious substance called the ether, but then he's just so one note, and it's just this, it's just there, and it just kind of drags everything down into kind of this miasma of forgettability. So what to you, I think, like, what can be the danger associated when you have a villain that doesn't necessarily measure up to these heights like the ones we talked about?
I think it makes the movie forgettable. I think that's what, like, we're talking about. Like Kia mentioned Iron Man 2, and like you've definitely messed up badly if Sam Rockwell is a villain in your movie and he's not at the top of a list of the best villains in the, like, Sam Rockwell is amazing in everything, and you had him as Justin Hammer, and yet you also were like, oh yeah, I forgot he was a villain in Iron Man 2, you know? And I think that, like, and I'm also on board. I'm actually one of the few people who love the twist in Iron Man 3 of Ben Kingsley and his Mandarin being a fake out. But like, at the same time, then like, Killian wasn't that exciting of a villain after that, so it wasn't like enough to amp it up. Whereas, yeah, like Loki, like, you can keep coming back to Loki because he's just so compelling and so fun. And Marvel has this great history, Marvel Comics, not just the movies, of these villains that could easily be the hero if you told the story a little bit differently. You know, you've got like Daredevil, the TV series, could easily have been called Kingpin and been almost the exact same show, because the villains are as important of a character to the story as the hero is. That's why Infinity War was so interesting, is that a lot of people argue that Thanos was the protagonist of Infinity War because he was written so strongly and such a compelling point of view and had such a like an arc of his own that like you almost, if you wanted to, you could root for him. And I think that's what makes a movie stand out, is when the villain is someone you actually can connect to and like and follow their arc.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why, for me, I think that's why somebody like Ultron didn't necessarily work as well for me, because, you know, when you look at the Avengers movies, I think most people could pretty universally agree that the second one is maybe the weakest one. And I think it all comes down to Ultron, because, you know, he has such an interesting kind of story, but there's not really a lot of ways you could relate to him. And he was kind of, you know, as powerful as a villain as Ultron is, he was kind of confined to doing this very kind of like very half comedic, half dramatic thing, where it didn't really have like a full consistency as in terms of tone and performance. And James Spader does a great job as like his voice, but there's not really a lot to sink your teeth into as compared to somebody like Loki or Thanos. So
yeah, I feel like Ultron, they were trying too hard to make him essentially just like a personification of the worst qualities of Tony Stark. And I think like that's the problem, is like what Avengers Ultron was not an Iron Man movie, it was an Avengers movie. And so it's like the reason why the first Avengers worked so well is, even aside from Loki, the conflict of the Avengers against each other made such a compelling story. But by the time you get to Ultron, it's like, no, you need a villain they can all rally against, not just be like, this is kind of a mirror of one of the characters.